Here we go. Okay, congratulations to anyone who has joined early. You're like me. I always get to the airport about 4 hours early, which everyone who ends up going on holiday with me hates. So I'm used to going into Pret-a-Manger and all the other shops and things and just hanging around doing nothing. But I never, ever like to be late. So we are going to start in a minute, but I thought we'd just kick off a minute early. I'm not going to hang around and wait for 5 minutes into the start webinar time, because if you're on time, you're on time, and we're going to go for it. I'm continually checking my time, and my clock says it's 4 o'clock. So that's in the UK. Wherever you are in the world, hello and welcome to Grip's next amazing, exciting webinar with 2 amazing, exciting guests. This is called Adventureland, and it's all about how B2B organizers are taking experience design when it comes to events to the next level. And we're going to really lean into this kind of theme park concept today, because if you think about it, they're the ones that really take it to the next level. And if we can even get 1% of that and put it into how we run our events, even our webinars like today, we could really increase the growth of events, whether they're digital or whether they're in person. Right, so I'm going to introduce our guests that we've got today. We have got 2 amazing leaders in the whole world when it comes to experience design. I'm going to get them to introduce themselves, but we've got Mac Fraser, co-founder and CTO of Connective, and Scott Burns, SVP of Creative at George P. Johnson Experience Marketing. I'm going to come to you first, Mac, and I'd like to hear about you. Give us your background and tell us a bit about how you use experience design in your day-to-day world.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. Well, welcome everybody. So my name is Mac Fraser. I'm the CTO of Connective. We are behind a series of shows. InsurTech Connect is one of our largest ones that we sold to Clarion a couple of years ago. We currently have Manifest, Blueprint. Transform is a show we used to own. We just transacted that one a couple of years ago as well. We also have another one called Medicarians, which is focused on senior health and wealth. And so really, as we think about our events, it's about the experience for attendees. We spend a lot of time building experiences and technology. So I'd say as a company, we over-index or over-invest in technology for our experiences, everything from smart badges to roundtables to we even built our own registration system because we want to sort of handle that experience from the beginning to the end. It's been a journey. I've been involved in the event industry for 5 years. It's a short time relative to I'm sure many of you. I came from a startup before that actually did auto insurance technology, pay-as-you-drive technology for tracking behaviors in automobiles. Worked across the globe with those products and services, and then had an opportunity, used to go to InsurTech Connect, and then had an opportunity to join that team as part of that experience and really dig into events for the last 5 years and build some really amazing events with some really amazing people.
Thanks very much, Mac. Great to have you here. Amazing experience there. And going to hand it over to Scott Burns. He's going to tell us a bit about him and how experience design informs what he does.
Hey guys, yeah, Scott here. I'm in New York City, actually, at the New York International Auto Show with some clients and doing some work. My background is a little bit different. I've been in events my entire life. Started 25 years ago in Chicago, working in the spirits and consumer electronics space. Moved to St. Louis, where I worked with Anheuser-Busch for 11 years, creating, memorable moments around, the cultural tent poles of our lives, World Cups and Olympics and sporting events and music events and all that. And then I 9 years ago, I moved out to San Francisco to head up creative for GPJ, where, 110-year-old, 115-year-old event marketing company that has pillars in automotive and IT, and working across, amazing global brands, bringing to life their business and their brands in hopefully immersive fashion. And it's been a great journey, and it changes every day. And I think that's probably what we're here to talk about, is what's changing and what's happening.
And the good news is, you know, these two guys, we did a pre-call, we've done a few, and yeah, some of their insights are amazing. So look forward to that. Now, to ride this particular webinar, you have to be 1.58 meters high. And obviously, the louder you scream, the faster we go. I'm going to be getting a lot of these theme park style puns into today's webinar, but it's going to be high octane. I don't like theme park rides. I get violently sick whenever I even look at one. I went on the NASCAR ride in Vegas once. It was 2 days where I felt normal again. So, you know, hopefully this isn't going to make me feel too sick, but I know there's going to be some awesome insights that might push me over the edge. Right, let's get going. Scott, I'm going to come back to you and ask you a pivotal question, which, you know, a lot of these webinars, they never ask the question, which is, tell me what experience design is. I'm going to come back to you and ask you that. But first, I'll put a few slides together to kind of set the scene, because I think this is quite a visual topic we're talking about. And the first one is just about what is experience design when it comes to theme parks. Now, Scott, I know you're going to tell us about events, but I just wanted to really look at who's the leading theme park designer in the world right now. And that's a company called Scruffy Dog Creative Group. They do theme parks for Disney, Alton Towers in the UK, Legoland. And what they say experience design is, when it comes to theme parks, is creating an engaging and memorable experience for guests, combining storytelling, technology, architecture, environment design, and interactive activities into a single concept that creates an immersive experience. And I think we could all agree that that probably applies to events as well. You know, and I've heard some event organizers not talk about their participants as attendees or sponsors, but talk about them as guests, because they could leave at any moment, and you need to have such an amazing experience to bring them back again. And it's all about retention. So that's what the theme park designers say. But let's look at some examples of what's been going on in the event organizer world. What I see from my research that I've done, and I'm no expert on this, but there's a real, you know, two camps though where these experiences fall into. It's the digital and it's the physical. And I'm sure Mac will come and talk to us later on about how these two things combine. So maybe there's a third one, which is the physical and the digital coming together. So let's just talk about some of the physical ones. One of our clients is Messe Frankfurt Middle East, and they run a show called Beauty World. There's an amazing event portfolio director there called Flynn Roberts, and she's done a case study with us recently. And they do some brilliant activations and experiences and immersive kind of things at their show. It's one of the world's biggest beauty trade shows, and they have like barber competitions and all sorts. But this is one of my favorites, where they get 15 fragrance houses that design all the fragrances for the big brands. Each one comes up with a particular fragrance for the show. And then the participants who come to the show vote on their favorite, and then the best fragrance is crowned. And that year there is a fragrance of the show. And I think that's super cool. Another one you could see, obviously, is leveraging your exhibitors to come up with brilliant brand activations. And this is one of my favorites. Very, very simple, but very clear in terms of the execution, which is Lockheed Martin coming up with a way for you to take a selfie for, you know, Instagram or wherever, what other platform you kind of use. And this is their kind of space cafe where you could have 0G, which obviously there's complete load of 0G there, and you are going into space. Our CEO, founder CEO, Tim Groot, this morning was at this show, International Food and Drink event at Excel. And he had this amazing, I think it was Montgomery Group. He had this amazing experience where he was watching fish filleting happening in the Skills Theatre. So yeah, I bet that had smell-o-vision there as well. And then we can go into digital. So last time we had our webinar, it was all about registration. And there was a really good one there from Elijah, who runs all their events. He used to be head of the events at HubSpot as well. And he's come up with this concept of one-click registration, where you literally put in your email, and that then takes you to sign up for the event. And next time they speak to you on a digital channel, they can pick up some more data from you. So every time they're collecting more data as you kind of go through the registration process. I think that's really nice because, you know, I always used to think, oh, it's all about the in-person experience, but there's a digital element to this as well. So how do we take the end-to-end journey? Another part of the journey, obviously, what we do around meetings, so finding participants to meet. I've used this technology. I've found it beneficial when I've been to events, you know, having people recommended to me to meet, and then automatically coming up with where I should meet them, what time, putting it in my calendar. And for me, it's kind of magical. And that's for me, a lot of these experiences, if they're magical, there's an element of magic where it removes so much friction that it just feels exciting. Those are sorts of experiences that I like. And now how Airbnb does it. Brian Chesky, who is the co-founder of Airbnb, has this amazing way of understanding and elevating their Airbnb experiences that they do there. So what they have is their like 1-star experience. How would it look like? So your host doesn't show up, you're on the street, it's raining. And then they level it up, and their design team look at all the different star experiences that you could get to get to 11-star experience. So imagine turning up at the Airbnb and there's thousands of fans waiting to greet you like they greeted the Beatles in 1964. Now, obviously, they'll discount the 11 and the 10-star and the 9-star, but maybe there's the 8-star experience that they brainstorm. Maybe there's something in that. So really pushing yourselves to the far boundaries of what's possible could enable you to come up with some brilliant experiences at your events. So that's a quick rundown. And now I want to pass it over to the actual experts in the room. Scott, I'd like to talk to you about experience design. How does that actually play out in events? What is it? And how do people start on this journey as event organizers?
Yeah, I mean, listen, experience design becomes an extension of what any brand is trying to accomplish, right? Because experience design is everywhere now, right? And in the last few years, companies like Adobe have really and leaned into the notion that experience design is every touch point you will have with a brand, right? Everything you will do, whether it's on your device, whether it's on your screen, whether it's in retail, at an event, how you use the product, is all encompassing. And for us at GPJ, that means that everything starts with strategy, right? Like, what are the outcomes that we're trying to achieve with what we are going to do? And where does that relationship begin, end, or does it ever end, right? So, Mac's going to talk to us more on the technology side, but our devices and our connectivity with social media, with the technology itself, with the products, is kind of omnipresent. So when we think about experience design, we have to think about all of it, right? So whether, yes, we might have more influence when someone comes through a threshold moment and, like the theme parks, remove you from, you're no longer on, 9th Avenue, you're in Javits, but Javits isn't Javits. It's a new magical place. That we might have more influence, but we have to understand every aspect of that consumer's journey as we help build the brand and the business, right? And brand is just another word for trust. So everything we do is about making that experience promise that we can continually deliver on at every step of the way. Because we all know what happens when you break a promise, right? Like if I was said I was going to be on this podcast and I didn't show up, all of a sudden you're not going to invite me back. You're not going to trust me. That's the same thing with a brand. If you're not showing up in the right way as you have established, you start to break that promise. And that's when you get nasty words like rebrand or repositioning. And we don't want that, right? We want to continually be putting our clients and their business and their brands forward, earning the trust of their most important customers.
You're right, because I guess it's, someone turns up to an event experiencing something and they have been promised this experience. And if they turn up and they don't get it, they're going to churn, really. And I think a lot of large conferences suffer from first-time exhibitor churn.
Yeah,
up to
and listen,
40%.
yeah, it's a huge. This is why I love experiential. And I've always been in it because the value exchange is the most valuable thing that any of us have, which is our time, right? It's about the money. It's about our time. It's where we are going to be paying attention. And so if I am asking you for your time and attention, I surely have to bring something of value to that. Otherwise, that value exchange gets upside down and you no longer have the time, the most valuable asset of your customer, which is their time, right? We have to overextend ourselves. We have to reach and give that value to the audience, to the consumer, to the attendee, to the guest, whatever you want to call them. But it's incumbent on us to create these moments that they want to invest in with their most valuable asset, which is their time.
Yeah, I mean, I'll bring it over to you, Mac. It's always been said that people like, Zuckerberg and Musk and even, someone like Bezos, they're the world's richest people. The one thing they can't buy more of is time. So how do you, when it comes to, your old event where it had 8,000 people, wasn't it, InsurTech Connect? How did
Yep.
you ensure that your brand promise was met and you delivered the return on time for your attendees?
Yeah, so as we look across all events, like one of the things that we constantly think about is like people's time and efficiency, right? The reason why people go to events is because it's one of the most efficient uses of their time. Where the people that they want to meet with, getting the right people there, getting the right people in the room, it's the most efficient way for them to make those connections, either create new business opportunities or build their network in the most efficient way possible. And so we have to think about ways that facilitate that. And so one of the things that we often think about is like, as events grow, especially, you get scales 8 to 10,000, it's about helping people network efficiently. So we believe underneath our events that people who go to an event, make a lot of connections, end up having a great event, whether it's a sponsor who gets a lot of connections, a lot of leads, or any attendee who builds their network, finds out new resources or builds sort of their I think Scott, you may have used the term digital backpack, or really their sort of knowledge base in a way that expands everything that they have access to. It helps them more efficiently later on in their time for looking for a solution to a problem that they have. Oh, I've got an idea, a starting point that I can engage with. And so we think a lot of it about is like, how do we then make it really easy for a person who's going to an event to sort of like, also like eat the elephant, right? Events can be big, they can be huge, they can be sprawling. There's hundreds of people. How do you get the right people at the right time and sort of get into that efficiency? So how do we let them network more efficiently? How do we find their tribe or their people? We just, one of our past events, Transform, I was just there. They held it about 2 weeks ago at the Wynn Las Vegas. First time I'd been at that venue, big vast venue, a lot of things going on. But like at that event, we generated like 50,000 connections using our smart pad technology, because people there, they're not big on meetings, but they're big on getting together as groups. And so, running into people in the hallway, round tables being another really great use of their time, where they get to network with people on a similar topic, a similar problem space, and use that as a way to sort of find their tribe or find their people that they're looking for at a larger event. It's, the same way you look at a floor map at an expo and you're like, where do I start? Who do I want to hit? Where do I want to go? We do things with like just even maps to sort of like put those high key points around topics or interest to let people efficiently attack it. We've got an event coming up in like a week and a half, our senior health and senior wealth event. And at that, we've got, people that are focused on financial planning. We've got people who are focused on Medicare and Medicaid, and we've got all these different segments. And so we're thinking about how do we create the journeys for them so they can get to efficiently, network in a hosted lounge or something like that, but also the different segments of the attendee experience that gets them to the right people that they're interested in meeting and like allow them to network super efficiently.
That's great. I mean, it sounds like there's so many different parts to your event, and you've really thought about how do you ramp up each experience and make it a rounded kind of holistic experience. But
Yeah, like
how
when
do
we
you
think
actually?
about events, right?
I
Yeah,
was going
when
to
we
say,
think about our events, right, we have a network. The idea being is it's a three-sided triangle, right? We've got sort of our investors, our startups, and our incumbents, and those coming together in the right space. Not all of them want to meet each other, but there's, each side has a set of relationships. So how do we facilitate those through different types of experiences?
so if you actually map this out, then have you got a timeline and put on the timeline, this is when the attendee registers for my event, or the participant, and these are all the stages they go through? Is that how you start when it comes to experience design for events?
I'll say we don't start with the timeline as much as we think about what are the outcomes, right? And so how do people get a positive outcome from the event? And so it's like, what would make this event successful for this archetype of person? So we think of personas, we think about experiences, and we think about what is the outcomes that will make it successful, that they'll come back, they'll feel like it was a great use of their time, and they'll feel like it was like super efficient, like I got everything. And then, you know what? I have a way to take it all and share it with my team or anybody else back at home.
That's nice. So I was thinking you just go, this is what the person's doing. They're going to networking, they're going to the drinks. But actually, I mean, Scott, you could probably jump in on this. You're starting more strategically than that. You're focusing on what's the value they want at the end. And I suppose, Scott,
Yeah.
what's going on with the New York Auto Show? You say you're doing stuff for Nissan there. Is that how you approached it? And you thought, what do people actually want from Nissan at this show?
Yeah, well, you think about the outcomes, right? You do think about the personas, but there was a time when we would do journey mapping, right? We would take those 5 or 6 key personas and map what their experience journey would be and where we'd want it. I think as we've evolved because of technology, now we create experiences for 10,000 journeys to happen in, right? So we're thinking about where we start and what is the core messaging and what is what is that experience promise that we need to ensure happens across this space with the outcomes in mind, and how do we get there, knowing that, when we're having a word on Dreamforce and there's 40, 50,000 people at the experience, we're never going to be able to craft every single individual journey. Moreover, the attendees don't want you to, right? They want the freedom of discovery. They want the freedom of choice. They want the freedom to zig when we want them to zag. Like, we have to give them that. So you do start thinking about a theme park analogy where you really want to create a world for them to explore and discover, with every outcome in that world being where the brand or the business wants them to be, right? And again, leveraging technology, leveraging entertainment, leveraging all the things that we care about, like the rituals of our lives, leveraging all those tools to create an experience that are going to allow for the multitude of journeys that are going to happen, as opposed to where we were maybe 10 years ago, where we're really trying to be prescriptive with that.
Okay, let's drill down into that a little bit, because I'd like to ask both of you, how does an event organizer today, what do they need to do? You talk about all these different experiences inside Dreamforce, for example, Scott. Say I'm a new event director, I'm now on Dreamforce. Do I put it on a slide deck? How do I actually visualize this massive event and make sure that I'm thinking about all these outcomes? Is there a template that you use? I'd like to know realities of how people are doing it today.
So, I mean, every client we have slightly different, as you would imagine, right? And a lot of it comes down to sort of the pillars and belief systems of that brand or that particular experience, where they've been, where they want to go, and what we're trying to accomplish. But generally speaking, we do start to look at, like, what are the ethos of this experience? No different than the promises that Disney makes, right? Or the core, like, there's a lot of brands out there that have promises that we as consumers don't know. Anheuser-Busch, making friends is our business. That's never going to be on a billboard, or it's never going to show up an event, but it's how they think, right? Nike, we believe that there's an athlete inside of everyone. Again, that's not the tagline, that's not the event name, but that ethos, that belief drives everything they do. So we try to work with clients on a strategic level to help you understand, what is the promise? What is the thing that we're trying to accomplish? Then we try to establish some pillars, some guidelines that are say, here are the lanes at which we are going to judge everything we do, both from, and getting to that level of trust, because we all know there's two types of trust, right? There's the emotional trust, the way that maybe we trust our spouse or partner. Then there's the logical trust, the reason you trust your mechanic or your barber, because it's going to be right. You have to think of both sides of those in everything you do, because one thing is like, I care because this works, and then this, I care because I care. If you don't have both, you're probably missing something from your experience. Your design is not bringing to bear all the possibilities you could. And it could be an issue with your experience. It could be an issue with the brand. It could be an issue with the product. But you really have to dive deep and trust each other in that development process, that you bring to bear all of the possibilities when it comes to sort of those guidelines around what you're trying to design.
So it's the emotional and the rational coming together, and you're making sure that you're hitting both markers. I mean, Mac, tell me a bit about some of your events. How do you start doing the emotional and the rational? Real tactical on the ground. Tell me about some of your events and how you're plotting.
One of the key things that are, like, a lot of our events recently is we've been building out, like, so we have these like smart badges that we've built, and so this is like our own, where people use this to connect, and so people connect, it makes this little fancy tone, people like it shows up in the app within seconds, they get an email, follows up. But at the same time, what that does is it generates a lot of data about who's meeting with whom, who's connecting with whom, also where they are. We use it to also understand where people are at the event. What's really interesting to say is, like, you look at somebody builds an agenda, they've got this overly ambitious agenda of what they think they're going to do, and then they go down a completely different pathway, right? Like you said, they zig when they zag, they do different things. And so understanding that, and sort of understanding these flows of people, like, there's kind of what they put on their schedule agenda, the things that I think I should be doing when I'm at this event. And then there's what really happens at the event, right? Which is as they run into new experiences, so they run into colleagues, so they run into different people and have different conversations, their journey diverges from their planned path. And so understanding what that looks like for everybody, so we can still get them to do, I'll say, the things that we want them to do, which is to network and engage, right, is really what we're really after, is because we believe a successful event has connections, and the people that make a lot of connections, but understanding how people go about that. So we ensure that the smart badge works at the bar down the street, so when they can connect with somebody, they can share contact information outside of the venue. But we look at the data set because what you can really find out is people's based on their actual actions. Where did they spend their time? What did they do? Where did they go? Did they engage in some of these experiences? Maybe we don't do that experience again if we didn't get the engagement level that we wanted. Or maybe we build other experiences to bring those groups together, because we, again, like I say, we find the best engagement, the best experience where people vote with their time and their energy of showing up is when it's that sort of curated group of people that they must meet, they must see, they must engage with.
That's interesting. So what you're saying is, we're going into this new world of experience design based on data. So we're taking data to make these experiences more personalized. I think you mentioned that, didn't you, Scott, around, there's lots of different people coming to Dreamforce or some of your other events for particular objectives, and the objectives are different for different personas. And so are you using data to personalize experiences?
100%. And, AI is influential right now, right? We all know, and we're discovering what that means and how we're leveraging the machine learnings that we have. Obviously, you have to sort of strike the balance of like leveraging data for designing what you want your customers to know versus like the creepiness of it, right? And there's a lot of challenges with data use in Europe, particularly the GDPR rules. I mean, there's some challenges. However, it's also, you want to look at data as a singular point, right? Because the data is generally accumulation of what has happened, right? But when you want to do something new or you want to try something different, the data can only get you so far, right? At some points you have to look at your gut and trust that you're going to do something that's emotive, that's going to excite. And that's when things get exciting. When you can marry data with sort of that gut instinct or that creative notion or the zeitgeist of the day and what's going to happen, and start to dream up new things and things that have never been done before. And one of the reasons I love experience design is because, unlike maybe doing a commercial or an ad for the Super Bowl, if you do that and it flops, like, we're all in trouble, right? But in an event, if you get an audience, a guinea pig, to go over in a corner and try something, if it doesn't work out, okay, you learn, you get better, you grow from it, and it doesn't have to encapsulate everything you do. Which is why I love to talk about, like, experiences are great for like beta testing and labs and discovering, trying products, trying experience, testing stuff on all us guinea pigs. Because again, if we do it, make it fun, we make it immersive, we make it educational, the value exchange is there. And I'm willing to try, I'm willing to go, I'm willing to give you my time to do something. And maybe if it doesn't play out exactly the way we designed it, that's okay, because we're thinking about everything holistically. And I think, again, modern experience design is very holistic. I think we're no longer thinking about the moment they just, register to the moment they fill out their survey. Like, we're thinking year-round engagement on ensuring that our brands and our partners are talking to their most important customers, in a very ebb and flow way, using modern communication.
Well, when it comes to modern communication, I'd like to just talk to you, Mac, about what are the digital touch points that people have that make a great experience. And before I get to you on that, you can start thinking about it. I'm going to just have a quick sponsor message. And the sponsor message as part of this experience is our next webinar is coming up next month, one a month. It's all about Go for Growth, new metrics for event organizers in 2024. There's a QR code that you can scan there to take you to the registration page. You can register for it. We've got a bunch of people. We tried this last time as part of the experience to book a webinar from a webinar. It worked really well. We had a bunch of people sign up, and those people are now on this webinar. So this one is all about KPIs. We're in this world where, the global economy is seeing a bit of a downturn. And that means that senior leaders, event organizers, are paying closer attention to the metrics and the health of their events to see what's really happening. Now, unfortunately, a lot of C-level executives look in the rearview mirror and they look at the wrong stats. Often they'll look at NPS, which is very helpful, but what you want to be looking at is the metrics that are going to help you predict the future. And so we've got some brilliant speakers on that one to help us review what the new metrics are for event organizers in 2024. So please come along to that one. Right, Mac, let's have a chat to you about the digital touch points that could create a good experience, and also bad experience. Tell me about the bad ones where digital's really making stuff fall over and making our attendees, sponsors, and exhibitors churn.
Yeah, so I think, one of the ones that this is sort of like one of the pillars of where we got to like our smart badge technology is like we believe the badge scanning experience is terrible, right? Like that idea of going into an expo hall and being a one-sided sponsor scanning feels like you're on a used car lot being pitched all the time. So that's why we developed the smart badge along with our partners, was because it's an interactive, it's a two-way street. You get connected to a sponsor gets connected to you, you get both each other's information. It's bilateral. So it adds value. It creates this great footprint of digital information, along with all this other experiential stuff. Scott was mentioning about iterating on ideas. We are constantly going back to the drawing board. Like I'll talk about roundtables. Roundtables and Transform, we started it way back when with like a curated chief resource officer experience that we then that was like 2018. And now here in 2024, it's a completely different product, a completely different experience where people come up with their own topics and they just sit down at breakfast and create a roundtable on their own. But it goes through these iterations of experiences. So there's times we've built things where we're like, you know what, this isn't working. This doesn't hit the goals for the people. It didn't make more connections. It didn't create better experiences for people. So we'll either revamp it or we'll swap it. An experiment we tried. We did a sweepstakes thing. We happened to have one of our big events manifest right before the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. So we gave away 2 tickets, air flight, hotel, everything like that. And we used it as a sponsor engagement tool. So allowed sponsors, people to pre-register, kind of mark what sponsors they're interested in. Sponsors got that information as a connection. And then on site, we had these down markers people could scan and engage with. What we found, which was somewhat interesting, is the pre-event sweepstakes entries was a small number of people. I'll say small. It was, 1,000 people, but it was, they went to they sort of maxed out their entries. On site, what it did was it increased the diversity of the attendees who experienced that. So we had another 700-800 people engaged that didn't engage previously, with a smaller number of the sponsors, but it created a larger diversity pool. So it was an interesting experiment to see on-site pre-event experience, digital. How do we notify people about the experience? How do they engage in it? And it became part of a campaign that we put together for that. Another piece that we do is we do a lot of hosted buyer type stuff. So engaging those people either through digital channels or how we recruit them into it, what the requirements are for the program, making it just the same way as it's like a sales pipeline. What are your touch points? What's the expectation you're going to get from them? So it's a two-way street, right? You're giving them a ticket, but they're also giving you their time. So also engaging along the way to ensure that they show up on site, they engage with the sponsors, they do all these pieces. I think of it the exact same way as selling a new sponsor at an event, right? It's a pipeline. There's interaction points. There's touch points. Here's what we need from you. Here's what we're going to give you. And it's this exchange and creating value all the way to the very end through those digital touch points, phone calls, other pieces. It's not just digital. We've also added things like SMS into some of our tools we do this thing called VC office hours, where we have a bunch of investors. They set up at tables. We usually use our lunch tables for that. And people come in, startups can come in, just scan a QR code and sign up to talk with VCs. It's like their chance to take a shot talking to a VC that hasn't taken their call for the last 2 years for their startup. And it creates a digital queue. And people love it, but one of the big pieces that we added to it that increased everybody's satisfaction was adding SMS messaging. When are you up in the queue? What's next? So you could run to the bar, grab a drink. You could have that conversation with somebody else comfortably and know you're not going to miss your spot in line. And that was a game changer for the people, enjoying that experience much more than sort of standing in line, hovering, waiting for the VC to come free again, on both sides. So.
Well, it sounds like you do this kind of thing that everyone talks about in tech, dog fooding, where you've kind of put yourselves through this experience to see what it's like before you go live with your participants.
Yeah, totally. Like the amount of experiments that we do at each and every one of our events, we develop between sort of 3 and 5 new experiments of things we're trying. And whether we, because we have different events at different phases in their life cycles, so we can try these different experiences and with different sponsors, right? We have Fortune 500 sponsors. We have tiny startup sponsors. Each of them have different needs. different requirements. And so working with them and having conversations to what worked for them, what didn't work, seeing even though the renewal, why didn't they renew? All those pieces are understanding what makes a good event for them versus somebody else.
Brilliant. Now we've got 10 minutes left. The questions are coming in thick and fast, but I'm just going to pose them to you. And the first one to you, Scott. We're not going to do a big Q&A, but as they come in, I'll just throw them into the mix.
Yep.
Peter said something really interesting about this Glasgow Willy Wonka experience, which I'm sure we've all heard about, where they sold this amazing immersive consumer experience for, I think it was £35 a ticket. And then when you actually turned up, it was really bad. And yeah, it was just a warehouse with a few props that weren't very good. And it went everywhere. And I'm sure there's going to be a Fire Festival style documentary on Netflix about it in a year's time, which I'm looking forward to. So Scott, do you have any stories, says Peter, where the marketing has outsold reality? And what's the biggest mistakes you've made when organizing events? Probably early in your career, or maybe you've seen people making mistakes all the time. That's very easy to rectify from a kind of experience design point of view.
Yeah, so two parts of that. One is I think contemporary messaging almost requires us to be outlandish in our statements, right? This will be the best, we're always feeling that it has to be the most innovative thing, the most incredible experience you will ever have, the show of the year, right? Like we feel that we're almost implored to be outlandish in our promise. And frankly, a lot of times we're never going to deliver against that, right? Because when you think about what we're competing against, again, people's times, like the Super Bowl or Broadway or sport or whatever their passion is, if we're trying to do something from a branded or a business purpose, we're always going to struggle to live up to that. So I think, particularly as a young marketer, you feel like you need to be very, very you need to layer in all these these proclamations of how amazing, as opposed to getting to the value proposition. And I think that's something that I've learned through many events is like, what is the true value of this experience? Because maybe it's not going to be the most innovative, but it'll be the most personal. It might be the most connected. It might be the most whatever it's going to be. Get real and honest about it. I also think that sometimes one of the things that I've always not failed at, but one of the things that we often talk about is leveraging digital tools almost to the detriment of the human experience. So I can't tell you how many times, we start brainstorming on creating some sort of experience, and it's a theater, or it's putting on a headset, or really removing people from the world that they're in and wrapping them in technology. And people don't want to do that. Like they get alligator arms, or they're just like, I really don't want to spend 5 minutes putting on a haptic suit to do this thing. Like what I'd rather do is just talk with my friend over here or meet another human who, again, I often will say to my clients, still the most advanced piece of technology at any event is a person, right? Like that is still where the most value you're going to get from. So I think, looking back on some of the things that have failed is I think when we lean on technology too much, because it becomes cold, it becomes impersonal, and frankly, it becomes really hard to manipulate and adjust in the moment.
So have you got real life examples of where that's happened and it's gone wrong?
Yeah, I mean, we've done it for many of our clients, Cisco, Volkswagen, whatever, where we're putting people in headsets to do some immersive VR thing because we all think it's the coolest thing since sliced bread, and people don't want to put something on their head, right? They don't want to look through goggles. They want to have moments with each other. So, I mean, across our event portfolio, I can name dozens of examples where we try those digital engagements, whether it's with IBM or with, again, Cisco, Dreamforce, or a lot of our automotive clients. And they're unshareable. People can't do them together. And I think that's where oftentimes we fall down, because we get so enamored with the technology and the immersiveness of it, and we forget about the human side of it.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it comes back to your point, isn't it, around what are the objectives? What do people actually want to get out of the event in the first place? And if you start that and work backwards, you're always onto a winner. Mac, coming to you, we've got another question from PK saying, how are you able to create such a healthy financial budget for events that allows you to spend so much time testing, experimenting, and implementing new event tech?
So yeah, so that is a challenge. We lean on our vendors mercilessly to, also negotiate. We do all of our events in Vegas, right? So not a cheap environment to do events by any means whatsoever. We also, what we do, like I said, we'll take ideas and concepts and we'll iterate on them across our different shows. So in some cases, we'll make the upfront investment around an experience, but then rather than just replicate it, right, we'll take that foundation, we'll take that framework, and then reuse it, tweak it. Rather than reinvent every time from the beginning, we iterate on that experience to make it a little bit better each time. So therefore, we're not taking that cost on. Like I said, we over-index on technology. Like as a company, we spend a lot on technology relative to our peers because we believe we can use it to fill a lot of gaps in the sort of experience. It gives us options for what we can do. And then I think the other part too is, there's not there's when I think about us, right, across our shows, we make our money in just a few days, right? So we have to our show is a 3-day show, right? All the money for that year is made in 3 days. And so we have to sort of under promise, over deliver on that experience to ensure that we capture all that revenue the whole way through. And so that's really how we think about it too, right? We think about going through even our contracts and our pieces to say, what was it that we promised this? We talk to our sales team, say, what were your conversation notes of what you mentioned to them as this experience would be like to ensure that we're meeting expectations and exceeding expectations. And so that's been, I think, a big piece of our success is looking at every single aspect of it, every touch point that our sales team has with a sponsor, every email that goes out to our attendees from our our registration teams and stuff like that. What is that we've told them? How are we going to better that experience? Because we have such a like our year is made up in 3 days of success, and ensuring that we can execute on every piece flawlessly during that time frame. We work a ton of hours. Our team works super hard on site to ensure everything happens, and because it's like our opportunity, right? And so it's been like fun, exciting. Every single one of our shows is a startup, right? And so that's how we envision it, right? We're in year one, we're spending more money than we're making. Year two, we're hoping to break even. Year three, we're growing, right? And so every single time we go into it, it's a startup mentality of like, every dollar counts, every experience counts, every person that comes back the next year is somebody else we don't have to recapture, and it contributes to our growth. So just thinking about it from that perspective is, I think, super important.
Yeah, I love that analogy, and that's probably why they talk about event directors being the CEO of their shows, because it is a
Yeah,
bit like a startup, and you are, with every startup, you don't just will yourself into existence. It takes a couple of years for people to understand the brand and understand the brand promise and come back, and then start,
exactly.
hearing about you from word of mouth. Okay, we've got like 4 minutes left, 3 minutes left. Let's just do some quick fire stuff. Scott, tell me about personalization. Give me a quick brain dump on how you're using personalization, because that was one of the bullets in the registration page, and I do want to touch on that. How are you using personalization to make a better experience for each individual person?
Yeah, well, I think you want to make sure that whatever you're learning from the attendee, whether it's through registration, whether through a badge scan, we want to make sure you can identify with like 3 very specific things, right? We want you to be able to identify with a product, identify with your industry, or identify with a peer or a customer or someone else that you maybe compete with, right? We need to make sure that at least of those things, that from a B2B standpoint, maybe not in the consumer realm, but in the B2B standpoint, you want to make sure that everything is contextual and relevant. So those are the key things that we want to learn about our people when they come in, is like, what role are they in, right? What products are they using? What industry are they in? And using that data to ensure they can identify and we can tell stories around products, industries, and peer customers. And I think that's really crucial to really hit those 3 for us, because if we're not, we lose context, we lose relevancy, and then that value exchange doesn't happen.
Brilliant. Another quick fire one. Jimmy has asked a question, and it was the next one I was going to ask, actually. So well done, Jimmy, for predicting what I was going to say. This is a kind of a how do you get your feet wet? How do you get started? This is one for Mac. He said, there are brands or event organizers who were born during COVID, and they've yet to do their in-person events. So say I'm a new event organizer and I've done some great virtual events, and now I'm looking to do in-person. What's a good way to get my feet wet to really think about experience design to kind of ensure that I might not have all the data, but how do I just make sure I'm delivering a good experience very, very quickly for my attendees? What's the low-hanging fruit here?
I think it's just purely looking at the event from their perspective. Like you have your perspective from the operations and the organization side of it, but how is an attendee going to navigate your event, your experience, and get the best value for their time? So I just really think about like, if they walk in the door and they register, what is it they're going to do next? Where are they going to go? You don't want them going back to that hotel, right? You want them to engage with people. You want to give them those opportunities and think about every aspect of giving them a touch point and a reason to stay at your event and not go back to their hotel, because the best use of their time is to jump on a Zoom call somewhere else or down a hallway. So that's really, I think 100%, what we saw with virtual events, how hard it was to keep somebody's attention and their mind share. And it's the same thing in an in-person event, right? How do you keep them engaged? How do you keep them talking? How do you keep them, being part of the experience? Because there's other competing things with their time, which are, the calendar of Zoom calls and other things don't disappear necessarily. So you want to make it more valuable for them every step of the way.
And what
I would
about
just
you,
add,
Scott?
like,
30 seconds. 30
yeah,
seconds.
I would just add,
Nail it.
create something you would do. Be honest with yourself.
Yeah,
What would you
good.
do? How would you spend your time? And if you're creating stuff that you're like, I wouldn't do this, then don't do it.
Lovely. Well, what a fantastic way to end. Two brilliant guests. And this is our next webinar for everyone who needs to sign up and come along. Just lastly, Mac, how can they find out about you, the participants, if they want to reach out to you and ask you more questions? What should they do?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is one way I'm up there, but also you can just email me, Mac, M-A-C, at connective.com. Just give me a shout out, and happy to engage.
Lovely. And Scott, what about you? How should they connect with you?
Same thing. LinkedIn is great, but also an email, scott.burns@gpj.com. I have to warn you, my inbox is a bit of a disaster, but I'll try to get
Aren't they all?
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, thanks very much, guys. And thank you everyone for joining. And the recording will be available shortly. And yeah, it's been amazing. I'm now going to jump on my theme park ride and make myself thoroughly sick. So thank you very much and see you on the next one.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Bye.